A shocking new survey reveals the greatest threat that preppers in the U.S. believe we're facing, according to Michael Snyder's report. I was very surprised, he says, by the results of a survey preppers that was recently conducted by Fortitude Ranch. The CEO of Fortitude Ranch, Drew Miller, says that preppers are folks who watch events and read up on threats, and so they have a really good feel for what is really going on out there. Today, millions of Americans are preparing for a collapse of society because we really are facing very serious existential threats which could cause the complex systems that we depend upon on a daily basis to fail at any time. So I was very interested to examine the results of this new survey because it gives us some insight into what the prepping community is really thinking right now. Only preppers were permitted to participate in the survey, and those that responded were asked to identify the three greatest threats to our society. More than 50% selected loss of electrical grid as one of the greatest threats. I would not have guessed that that would be the number one response, but without a doubt, this is a potential danger that our politicians have neglected. Our sun is becoming increasingly active, and it's just a matter of time before a solar storm does a tremendous amount of damage to the grid. And once the U.S. is involved in a nuclear war, it would not have a functioning grid at all. Economic collapse, bioengineered viruses, domestic civil war due to divided country were all selected by more than 40% of respondents. Obviously, I was glad to see economic collapse so high on the list because I write about that so much, he said. And I think that bioengineered viruses is something that preppers are very focused on right now, especially after going through the pandemic. We're certainly living during a time when great pestilences will become increasingly common, and so it's imperative for all of us to be prepared for devastating outbreaks of disease. As for our country being divided, I really do think that 2024 is going to be the most chaotic election year that we have ever seen, and that's extremely unfortunate. More than 30% of respondents identified terrorist attacks as one of the greatest threats that we're facing, but no other response even reached the 20% threshold. A nuclear war arising from Chinese invasion of Taiwan barely squeaked over 10% mark, and a nuclear war arising from Ukraine-Russia conflict was way under 10%. Sigh. If this has been a survey of the general population, I could understand how such low numbers came about. I don't know what I have to do in order to get people to understand that nuclear war is a very serious threat. Perhaps after the first nukes are used more, Americans will start to wake up. Natural disasters also ranked very low in the survey. Maybe that's because the Yellowstone supervolcano was the only one that was specifically asked about. Personally, I would have added an eruption of Mount Rainier, a tsunami on the East Coast, a tsunami on the West Coast, a historic earthquake along the New Madrid fault zone, and the big one in California as potential responses on this survey. We're far more vulnerable than most people realize, and I'm entirely convinced that there will be unprecedented natural disasters in the United States during the years ahead as our very shaky planet becomes even more unstable. Another major threat that I would have liked to see asked about is in the survey is the rapidly growing global food crisis. Last year, 2.4 billion people did not have enough food to eat, and 750 million of them experienced chronic hunger. And the numbers for this year will inevitably be even worse. In fact, the numbers have been getting steadily worse since 2015. But because we live in a very wealthy nation that still has lots of food, most Americans are not concerned about the global famine that has already started at all. I also noticed that large asteroid strike was just one notch from the bottom on this survey. Apparently, this is something that most preppers are not concerned about at all, but they should be. It wouldn't happen tomorrow, but eventually the entire world will become aware of a tremendous threat that is looming in the heavens. Needless to say, there's a lot of disagreement about what our greatest threats are, but just about everyone understands that something has gone seriously wrong with our society. And that explains why gun ownership in the U.S. surged to heights that we have never seen before in the entire modern history of our nation. According to a new NBC News Nation poll, a whopping 52% of U.S. voters say they or someone in their household owns a gun. More than half of American voters, 52% say or someone in their household owns a gun, per the latest NBC News national poll. That's the highest share of voters who say that they or someone in their household owns a gun in the history of NBC News poll, on a question dating back to 1999. In 2019, 46% of Americans said they or someone in their household owned a gun, per an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll. And in February 2013, that share was 42%. Meanwhile, millions of Americans are stockpiling emergency food and other supplies, and they can feel that great chaos is coming, even if they do not fully grasp all of the specifics of the various very serious threats that we're now facing. If you have not been getting prepared for the collapse of society, I would very strongly encourage you to do so. What we have been through during the past few years is just the tip of the iceberg, and the clock is ticking. This is by Michael Snyder, and he says about the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled Chaos is now available in paperback and for the Kindle on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 7 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, commissions earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I have also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so you won't miss any of my articles. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream, and the most important news. And the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The material contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. This is on The End of the American Dream by Michael Snyder. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.